Let me start by welcoming you back to our fourth installment of Or Street on Your Street. This is the fourth video in our gospel oriented and mission minded series that we've been doing. As a quick little refresh, we have been looking at the primary commands according to Jesus in Matthew 22:34 through 40 and the Great Commission in Matthew 28:16 through 20. What we are looking for is ways for us as individual Christians and for us as the church to become more and more gospel oriented and mission minded. In our last video, we made the transition from looking at ways to become more gospel oriented to looking at ways to become more mission minded. I do need to say this. You cannot be mission minded if you are not gospel oriented. Being mission minded is like the limb that branches out from the trunk, which grows from the roots of being gospel oriented. You can be gospel oriented and refuse to be mission minded, but that's kind of called disobedience. You cannot be mission minded without being gospel oriented. All that being said, let's dive in. Matthew 22:34 through 40. Let me read it for you real quick. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together. And one of them, an expert in the law, asked a question to test him. Teacher, which command in the law is the greatest? He said to him, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. I want to look at this in two different ways. One, I want to look at this in regards to our own approach to self-preservation. And two, I want to look at this in regards to our partnership with Jesus Christ. Let me start by saying that I think both approaches are fair, and I believe that many of us as Christians have a hard time opening ourselves up to truly and completely loving our neighbors. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about who our neighbor is. I think for the vast majority of us, we know that when Jesus says love our neighbors, he's not necessarily talking solely about the people that live in the house or apartment to our left or to our right, or even across the street or behind us. He's talking about people in general. Your neighbor is that person that you do life with, that you see on a daily basis. It might be somebody at work, or it might be somebody on your sports team or on your child's sports team. It's just your neighbor is somebody within your proximity whose life you could, if you desired, to have an impact on. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But so let's go and look at the self-preservation approach. I want to start with a couple of questions. Why did you come to faith in Christ Jesus? Was it because of his love for you? Was it because he is God incarnate? Was it because he gave himself as a substitutionary atonement on your behalf? Or was it because hell sounded scary? Perhaps it was any combination of those things. Maybe it started out as fear of hell and grew into a really strong love and desire to know and be with God. Like I said earlier, both views are fair. But a lot of people come to what they call faith simply because heaven sounded better than hell. It's self-preservation. We naturally want to survive and to have hope of that survival. Heaven offers that and more. Hell offers eternal weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, if we're looking to be mission-minded in the command to love your neighbor as yourself, how does that impact our view of our neighbor? If we as sinners were once destined for an eternity separated from God in a place called hell, so are our neighbors. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If your neighbor has not done that, then they are not saved, and they are going to one day stand before the judgment seat of God and be sent away. Not back to their home and their daily routines, but to hell. Even if we have our differences with one another for whatever reasons, we don't, or at least we shouldn't, desire to see others suffer or die. I cannot stand the scenes in Titanic where those who are on the lifeboats are not trying to do more to let others on with them. I can't imagine had the firefighters and policemen and all the other first responders on 9/11 cared more about preserving themselves rather than rushing into those buildings and saving the lives of others. I can't even in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis imagine a person not caring if another person is struggling or suffering. Here's the great thing about Jesus. His lifeboat has enough room for all who call on his name. If we are in Christ, if we are, as 2 Corinthians 5:17 puts it, new creations, then we are preserved. We don't have to worry anymore about self-preservation. We don't risk our spot in the lifeboat by offering a spot to someone else. Self is taken care of. Now it's time to reach out and try and preserve the lives of others. That leads us to the second lens I would have us look through: our partnership with Jesus. In Genesis, man's initial order was to go out into creation and maintain it and produce life. That was God's invitation for us to be a part of what he was doing. We were going to get to be working with the creator of the universe, the sovereign God. Jesus, by telling us to love God and to follow that up by loving neighbor, is inviting us into the same partnership. To be in a partnership with Jesus is to follow him and become fishers of men. That means we need to constantly be casting our nets and not trying to bring and trying to bring others to Jesus. I could say a whole lot more about both of these approaches, but the point I want to leave you with is this. Jesus tells us to love our neighbor like we love ourselves. That means we should deeply desire that they know God. That means that we should deeply desire to see them well. That means we should deeply desire to help them when they are in need. So let me end with this. Do you love your neighbor? I hope you enjoyed this installment of Gospel Oriented and Mission Minded. We will finish our series on Friday. I'd love to hear your feedback on the series. Feel free to leave a comment or shoot me a message if this devotion has helped you in your walk with Christ, or if you have any questions about how to become a Christian. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.